I'm pleased to welcome for this closing remark John Dart, who is at the same time Chief Operating Officer of DEBRA International, but which we know more in EURORDIS for being also Secretary General. So, John, what are your take-home message at the end of this event?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm really very daunted by this because I sort of blithely thought, oh, that's fine, I'll stand up and say a few words of wisdom. And of course, the content of this meeting has been so rich, it's been so complex, that I think it would be impossible to summarise everything, to do justice to it. And after all, why should I? Because you've all heard it the same as I have. So unashamedly, I'm just going to spend a few minutes giving a few personal reflections about what I've heard. And I suppose the first is this, that, we've heard of the challenges that we have to face. So, funding for European reference networks, for example, is something that I guess is, of concern to all of us. The issues that many of us are struggling with health technology assessment and how to make sure that the patient's voice is heard in that. The struggles that we have in dealing with the complexities of research grant systems. There's all sorts of challenges still to face. We're not living in a perfect world. But I'm a half full sort of person rather than half empty. And I look around and I think, well, first of all, we have many more tools, we have many more vehicles now than we've had in the past. And I think it's given the good-natured criticism of the EU that was around in the last session. I think it's fair to say that without the work of the European Union, without the advances that have been made by Europe acting together, we would be in a much worse place in rare diseases. So, I think that is something that needs to be said. But also, even when money's not available, sometimes activities at a European or supranational level can just, if nothing else, encourage the rest of us to do things that we know we need to do, but it just gives us that final input. So Avril said we had to leave our jackets at the door, so I won't talk too much about the condition I work with epidermolysis bullosa. But in our case, we've built with clinical partners, the beginnings of a European reference, well, in fact, an international reference network on genetic skin disorders. The initial work has been funded by the patient groups. We clearly need more money if we're going to do everything that an ERN should do. But it's given us the impetus to say, well, yes, we do need to try and bring the different databases and registries we have into some sort of order where they can intercommunicate. We do need to have better clinical practice guides. All those sorts of things that we knew we needed to do, we're doing. We can do it a lot better when we get the money, but it doesn't mean we can't do it. And I think that brings me on to the one strand that I just wanted to follow a little. I'm very conscious that any one of us standing here would probably pull different bits from what we've heard today. So this is a very sort of personal reflection. But I suppose, the starting point is the sort of revalidation, the restating of the need for, the multi-stakeholder approach, that, patients, clinicians, researchers, industry, regulators, payers, we all need to be part of a unified approach if we're going to get anything done. But what I would want to do, I think, is just to focus a bit, given that EURORDIS is a patient organisation, on some of the sort of things I've heard today from the perspective of a patient group. And one of those is what seems to me, over the last or more, 5-10 years, a real sea change in the way that patient organisations are seen and relate to other partners. I guess many of us here from patient groups have had the experience of going to meetings and being told, oh yes, it's so important that patients are partners, it's so important that we involve you. And you know that as soon as you've put your signature on the grant application to the EU, that suddenly it'll still be important, but you won't be in the you won't be on the steering committee. I think that's changed, or I think it's changing. What we've heard here today, and I know from my experience in genetic skin conditions, is that we've moved to a point where I think we really can say that patient organisations are key players. You don't think this is structured, do you? Where patient organisations actually are key players. They're not the supplicants anymore. I can remember when we were so grateful that someone would take an interest in our condition. It's not like that anymore. And I think what we've seen in a number of the presentations today is the way that patient groups can drive change and not just be recipients. So we've heard, in a number of examples of where patient groups have been the motivator, the facilitator. We've heard about patient groups being the glue that holds things together. This is a terrible analogy, but a pearl necklace doesn't work unless it's got a strand through it. And I think often that's the role that patient groups play. I look back, particularly in conditions like the one I work with, where there isn't an existing product that we can repurpose, where we have to develop gene therapies, cell therapies, protein therapies, and are. And it's been, I like to think, the moral authority and the passion of the patient groups that has brought all the bits together because it's the patient groups who are concerned with seeing things through from basic research into the market and into reimbursement. Because to be honest, if you can have the most wonderful scientific advances, but if they don't get to the patient, they might as well not happen. And I think one of the things that we often bring is that we work with academics who are doing wonderful work in trying to understand the nature of that condition, but often fail to understand, or because they've not cut to that point in the work they've done, how they need to do that work in order for it to be acceptable to regulators, so that you can get clinical trials done. I've got experience of a project, not one we funded, thank God, which is wonderful proof of principle, but uses techniques that would never be allowed to be used on humans. So it's something about the patient, and we heard with Nick talking about AKU, but I'm looking at Avril. You could say the same about retinitis pigmentosa. We could say the same about cystic fibrosis. I'd like to think we could say the same about the condition I work with, EB. That it's been the patient group that has brought together the clinicians, the academics, industry, the regulators, and said, from an early stage, this is what you need to be doing in order to get things progress to the clinic. So I've banged on a lot about patient groups. I'm sorry, it's just, that's what I know. I felt that today has been a really tremendous experience, an awful lot of new information, a lot that I've learned, and really like just to end by thanking Jan and his staff for doing such a tremendous job, as they always do. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a collective work, and will be nothing without our members and our volunteers, John. With that, I'd like to say thank you to everyone, and particularly to all our speakers today, which I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I think they were Wonderful, and I'd like to thank them individually, each of them personally, because we know how committed they are, we know also how busy they are. Thank you for taking your time to join us and to share your views and to contribute to shape the road for the next year. Thank you very much, and you have a coffee outside waiting for you. Thank you to all of you.